All right, we are on week number 6 of the story of Joshua, the son of Nun, and that is from the book of Joshua. And the title of the sermon today is one of these little things that amuses me, God of Angel Armies. There's this famous Christian song that's been around, 20 years, I guess now, something like that, called Whom Shall I Fear? We've played it here in this church a few times. We don't play it very often because of the line at the end of the chorus, which is, the God of Angel Armies is always on my side. That's bad theology. There was a book that came out in I think it was like the 60s or 70s called God is My Co-Pilot. It's written by some author who had a fright in his plane, and he felt God pulled him through it, and he wrote this book, God is My Co-Pilot. It became a very famous, best-selling Christian book, and there was a bumper sticker that said that, put on your car, God is my co-pilot. And I remember one time we pulled up to a red light, and my dad was driving, and he saw that bumper sticker, and he said, son, you got the wrong seat if God is your co-pilot. It's just, this is what we want, though. We want God to join our lives. We want God to join our lives and make our lives better. We want the God of Angel Armies to be on our side. We want God to be my co-pilot while I make mistakes and he corrects them. That's not the gospel. From Genesis to maps, that is not the gospel. So we're going to talk today about preparing for spiritual battle. I've been promising you all the Battle of Jericho. I don't think anybody cares but me. It won't happen again this week. I'm sorry. I'm just going through Joshua the way it comes. And they take this moment before the battle, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. Let's walk through it. And honestly, I think there's a theme to this chapter, which is unusual. Because there's no chapters in the Bible, right? Really, the way it was written, there's no chapters in the Bible. There are no verses. It's just written because scroll space was so precious in those days. I mean, they didn't put punctuation. They put nothing. I always get amused when I see pastors talk about the commas and periods. There are no commas and periods in Scripture. There aren't. There aren't even, like I said, chapters. The verses and chapters were created by Irish monks. There's a book called How the Irish Saved Civilization. It's a fascinating read. But basically, the Irish monks in the Dark Ages were copying all the scriptures, and they couldn't keep track of where they left off. It's very difficult when everything's smashed together. They said, we got to come up with a system. So they just numbered them. They came up with their own numbering system, and that's our number system. So when you have a chapter in the Bible, it isn't like a thematic chapter to the writer of the Bible who wrote it. It is to us. But it just so happens chapter 5 in Joshua actually kind of has this nice theme to it. And it's about preparing for battle. So my question is, what do you do to prepare for a spiritual battle? Now again, remember, what's happening in Joshua 5 actually happened. It is historical and it's real. But it matches our spiritual life. So we can look at that. And so they're preparing for a physical battle. We prepare for, typically, spiritual battles. So if you know you have a spiritual battle coming up, how do you prepare for it? Now, people say, well, I don't know when spiritual battles come up. They surprise me. Okay, sometimes. But there are certain places you go and certain people you meet and certain things you do where there's going to be a spiritual battle. It could be a lot of things. It could be going to Walmart where it tests every inch of your spirituality. It could be that. You're going to go to Walmart, prepare, spiritual battle time. It could be somebody coming over, a relative or a friend that you don't particularly care for, and it always turns into a fight. That's a spiritual battle, right? It could be, you're going to look at the scores of the games on Monday morning, and it's going to depress you. That could be a spiritual battle. It could be a temptation that you always fight and lose. That's a spiritual battle. And oftentimes we know when they're coming. So my question is, do you prepare for them? Because you'd prepare for a physical battle, wouldn't you, if you had to? If you had to fight something or someone, wouldn't you prepare for it? You wouldn't run a marathon without training for it. I mean, I wouldn't run a marathon unless someone was chasing me. But, you got to prepare for these things if you know they're coming up. So when you know the spiritual battles are coming up, what would you do? Just kind of put that thought in your mind, because we're going to look at what happens now in the physical battle of the Israelites. Last week, we crossed the Jordan together. God miraculously parted the Jordan River, and they crossed during flood times. The Bible's clear about that. The river was as high as it can be. And so you've got to think, by the way, that as the Israelites approached the Promised Land, the people in the Promised Land who've been holding on to it for 400 years and don't want to give it up, know they're coming. I mean, you can't have a whole nation approaching you without knowing. It would be noticeable. You would also know that it's an army coming. And even in Jericho, they know they're going to be sieged. They know they're going to be attacked. But they probably were a little bit comforted by the fact that the Jordan River was high. We're in floodplains now. And nobody crossing Jordan River in this plain. They'll have to go, 50 miles up the road to where it actually gets a little bit more amenable to crossing. They'll probably cross up there. That'll take them days, weeks maybe, even if they can get there, even if they know it's there. There's no bridge across it. So they'll have to find some fording point where they can cross. We're good. And then all of a sudden God goes, splits their thing and they come right through. You know what's happening to the people in Jericho now who thought they had months to all of a sudden find all of Jerusalem, all of Israel there on their doorstep? Well, the Bible tells us, when the kings of the Amorites who were on the west side of the Jordan and all the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea heard that the Lord had dried up the rivers of the Jordan from before the children of Israel until we crossed over, their hearts melted. There was no spirit in them any longer because of the children of Israel. The children of Israel don't know that. Joshua's writing back. He's not writing this in his diary. He's writing back looking at it, right? So he knows, but no one knows. They're just arriving on the shores. They're preparing for battle. They're probably in pretty good mood right now because they watched their God split that river and they walked across and they realized God is still with us. And they probably felt pretty good about that as they laid out their camps and got all set up. And they know they're going to be fighting. And the young men are looking forward to the fight because young men do. And they're sharpening their swords, and they're polishing their armor. And Joshua is going to come out to them now and say, we need to prepare for battle. And they're ready. They're ready for that, right? But before they have taken one step into the promised land, God is already at work. Just the parting of the river scared people. God is already working on their behalf before they even know they have to fight. He's already got that done. And in fact, they should have known this because it was prophesied. Way back in Exodus, this is what God said. He says, I will send my terror ahead of you. My terror will come upon them. It'll throw every nation into confusion when you encounter them. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. Don't you worry. I've got this. I'm going to send the fear of the Lord upon them, and they're going to run and scatter. It is a great thing that God does when he confuses your enemies. I have been in situations before where I thought I was in trouble, and then God confused my enemies. And I thought, well, they're stupid. They're not stupid. They're confused. God confused them. It's a great thing. So now Joshua goes, okay, I want you all to prepare for war. Yes, Joshua, what do you want us to do? Do we have to go into drills, do some training? What do you want us to do? Well, here's what Joshua wants to do. I just want you to picture this. All the men, yeah, okay, Joshua, all right, what are we going to do? Okay, and the Lord said to Joshua, okay, here's what I want you to do. Go there, make flint knives for yourself, and circumcise the sons of Israel again the second time.
Okay, that's weird.
Okay, this is not how you prepare for battle, right? He's going to have all the men, all the people who are going to be fighting this battle get circumcised. Now, I love this sermon because I kind of see all the guys kind of cross their leg at this point. Go, really? That's what they're doing? They're going to do that? And then they're going to go fight? They're going to take a knife to that, and then they're going to go fight? This doesn't make any sense at all. And what's this stuff about a second time? How do you get circumcised twice? Now, what is that talking about, right? It's a scary thought once. Twice is even worse. Thank God they do it to us when we're babies in this country, typically. Not always, but typically. So we don't have to go through that. But Joshua does it. This is Joshua does it. He made flint knives for himself and probably his certain people he appoints, and he circumcised all the sons of Israel. And I love what they named this, at the Hill of Foreskins. Okay, there you go. And this is the reason why. There's a reason why now. Reason why. All the people who came out of Egypt who were males, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness on the way after they came out of Egypt. What's he talking about? He's saying that all the people who were in Egypt, they were circumcised. But that generation came out of Egypt, and they died off. Right? So the first generation, before Passover, before all the deliverance, they were circumcised. The second generation, though, had never been circumcised. They lived for 40 years in the wilderness, and they're getting ready to enter the promised land, which was God's covenant to them. And God was saying, before I give them what I promised them, they have to do what they promised me. That's how a covenant works, right? Is this any way to prepare for a battle, though? Don't you think someone might say, okay, God, good point on the circumcision. I get it. But right now, we need all of our fighting men in able-bodied condition, and that's going to take the edge off a little bit. I don't think we necessarily want to do it now. How about after we defeat Jericho, then we'll do it? This is how we plea bargain with God. I get that you want me to do this thing, whatever this thing is, and it's going to be painful. Let's say tithing, because that's always painful, almost as painful as circumcision. Let's say, I know you want me to do it, but this is a bad time for that. This is just a bad time. How about later? How about after? How about you give me your part of the promise now, and I'll pay that later? Does anybody remember the Popeye cartoons? Remember that guy? I'll gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today. I can't remember that guy now. Limpy. Okay, thanks. Wimpy. Thanks. You guys remember him better than I do. That's what we always do to God. We're always making, I love that, wimpy. We're always making the wimpy plan. We have a wimpy plan. I love that. The metaphor's perfect. It fits. But listen, the only way they're going to win is to be obedient to the Lord. They can't beat Jericho. Jericho's never fallen. They have walls that are 14 feet thick. They don't have siege weapons. They don't have catapults. How are they going to beat Jericho? They can't. The only way they can beat Jericho is if God steps in. And God's saying, yeah, I'm your God, but you're supposed to be my people. And the deal was that you would be circumcised as a sign of that, and you haven't done it. See, our obedience will seem like foolishness. You can count on it. God will ask you to do things that just seem stupid. Makes no sense at all. Why would I do that? I know sometimes people are praying for God's will in their life, and God will reveal something to them, and they'll think, okay, but that's stupid. What do you really want me to do, right? What God really wants you to do is be obedient to what he's already told you. And sometimes the reason what he's already told you seems so stupid is we have been so disobedient for so long, and we've missed all the steps along the way, and he's trying to take us back to the beginning. And we say, well, that doesn't seem to fit. And God says, yes, it does, because it's the beginning of obedience. And you have to understand that what God cares about is your obedience. He can handle Jericho. But what he won't handle is your heart. That's up to you. That's up to you. And Joshua goes on to explain it. In case you think I made this up, he goes into detail more than once because that's how Joshua writes. He's a very repetitive writer. All the people who came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness on the way, as they came out of Egypt, had not been circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the people who were men of war who came out of Egypt were consumed because they didn't obey the voice of the Lord, to whom the Lord had sworn that he would not show them the land which the Lord had sworn to their fathers, that he would give us a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay, that big mouthful basically saying God promised it. They disobeyed him. They didn't have the faith, and so they all died in the wilderness. And this next group absolutely was not circumcised. So Joshua circumcises them, all of them. That's a lot of people, folks. This wasn't done in an hour. This took a while, right? There are a lot of cries. I preached this sermon back in 2015, and the sermon title was Flint Knives and Righteous Cries, because that's what happens, right? And this is, I'm told, I don't know, I didn't go through this as a full-grown man. I'm told it's very painful, and it's very painful for some time. And so that's not easy, right? But I want you to see what happens now. So it was when they had finished circumcising all the people that they stayed in their place in the camp till they were healed. Do you think? Do you think maybe the guy's like, I'm just going to sit here for a while. I don't really want to fight right now. I think I'll just stay right here with a pillow. I'm good, right? Yeah, but then watch what God says. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. And that's why they named the place Gilgal. The reproach of Egypt. Reproach isn't a word we use very much anymore. But reproach is when you're warned because you've done something wrong. Now, in my family, when I was a young kid in church, on wooden pews, folks, we didn't have padded chairs, we were expected to behave, which usually we did, right? But every now and then, I had 3 brothers, we goofed off. And then you'd see my mother give us this look of reproach. Right? That was what you see. And you better look at that look of reproach and wise up. Because the next thing you got was this. Oh boy, the snap of reproach was even worse. That 3-snap thing, that means you're getting ready to get it. And the next step was out. You got grabbed by the nice blue suit that you wore to church and was yanked out in the back, where my mother gave you the discipline of reproach, right? So this, to this day, I can feel it, the snap of reproach. But God's saying, I had reproach on you. You may not have seen it for 40 years, but you had disobeyed me for 40 years. That's what the reproach of Gilgal was. And God says, I've rolled that away from you now. I no longer have that between us because you're finally obedient to me. So the covenant was plain. It was told to them way, way, way back when God spoke to Abraham in Genesis. He says, look, I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. I'm going to give you a promised land. I'm going to bless you guys greatly. That's my list of things I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to do one thing. Well, two, if you say you're going to serve me and only me. That's one. Two, you're going to get circumcised. That's all you have to do. Other than that, you can just be Jews, and I'll take care of you. That's it, right? God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant that you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised on the 8th day. Every male on the 8th day. Babies, because babies don't know. It goes by faster. The skin heals quicker. It's not as bad on babies. And the uncircumcised male child, if anyone gets skipped, shall be cut off from his people because he broke the covenant. There were a lot of babies born that were never circumcised. A lot of 8 days passed and nothing was done. That people just simply forgot that part. And God says, no, that's your part. You have to do that. But for 40 years, they'd failed to keep their part of the covenant, and yet God remained faithful. He didn't have to. He could say, okay, never mind. Let the wild animals have you. If you're not going to obey me, fine. But he didn't. He stayed faithful to him. All the time Moses was leading them. Moses, the greatest civil leader of all time, had a bit of an issue with this, I'm just going to say. Moses, I know, he's like almost pitch perfect in every other way, but he seemed to be a little bit off on this whole circumcision thing. When he ran away from Egypt, way, way back when he was the prince of Egypt, he runs away, right? And he goes and he gets married and he takes care of his father-in-law's sheep. Well, when he got married, the woman he got married to, they're kind of cousins, but because they're both descendant of Abraham, but they're not Israelites, right? They didn't keep the circumcision. So circumcision was not part of it. And so his wife, Zipporah, didn't understand circumcision. And I don't know if it was just Zipporah didn't want to circumcise their children and Moses didn't push it, or Moses didn't think it was important. But he never circumcises his son. And then God speaks to him in front of the burning bush and says, go speak to Pharaoh on my account. And he says, absolutely. And he gathers up things and he gets his brother Aaron. He's ready to go. And God's like, whoa, 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 where are you going? Your son is still not circumcised. How in the world are you going to lead my people? By the way, they're all circumcised in Egypt. When you're disobeying me, how are you going to be this leader? And a weird thing happens, and usually we skip right over it when we preach these sermons because it's just hard to explain. But in Exodus 4, Moses is traveling, and God wants to kill him. God threatens to kill him. As Moses and his family were traveling along and had stopped for the night, Jehovah appeared to Moses and threatened to kill him. Whoa. He's just told him to go deliver a message, and he gets going, and God says, whoa, you take one more step, I will kill you. And the Hebrew here is a little bit uncertain. It seems as though Moses is paralyzed at this moment, like God paralyzes him. And he's going to kill him because he's been disobedient. And this whole thing that happens next, I think kind of says that Zipporah was against the circumcision thing maybe, but now she sees Moses can't do it. So she does it. So Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses, the other translation, threw it at his feet. And it says, surely you have become a bridegroom of blood to me. I married you, now I have blood on my hands. I didn't want it on my hands, but I had to do it because God's getting ready to kill you. And so then Moses gets up and he's able to continue on his way. Now, you would think after that, Moses would say, I think God takes his circumcision pretty seriously. But he doesn't enforce it. Now, obviously, he can't go around checking every baby that's being born, but he has people working for him that could have, and yet he lets it go. But you can't do the Lord's will while being disobedient. We pray, God, show me your will in my life. And like, well, my will in your life is for you to be obedient. That's the first will in my life. I just need to know what your will is. My will is for you to be obedient. No, come on, seriously, God, tell me what your will is. This is how our conversation goes with them. Moses hadn't circumcised his own son. God sought to kill him, so Zipporah did it for him. Okay. So, but I want you to notice, though, that they had time to heal, getting back to Joshua. They had time to heal. Now, that might seem silly. Well, of course they did. They took time to heal. You're not going to fight that battle. But they probably didn't think they had time. When they crossed the Jordan, they're ready to fight. Because, they're there. They see them there. There's no surprise anymore. We have lost the element of surprise. I'm not going to take a week off right now. That's why they want to go and fight. And God says, no, you're going to be obedient. I can't be obedient. I don't have the time. Sure you do. Because God had given them the time to heal. God had baked it into his whole plan. That's why they crossed the Jordan the way he crossed, so fast. They had time. And we have to understand that. Sometimes we try to say, I don't have any time to be obedient to God. I'll do it later. But no, they crossed the river through a miracle so they would have time to obey the Lord. And this is one of the things I love to say. The infinite God is never out of time. Don't worry. He's got it covered. If he's telling you to do something and you're saying, I don't have time to be obedient right now, yes, you do. You have time because God has time. Because he created time. He's got it all planned. It's okay. All right. So after all this, they camped. So they camped there in Gilgal while they're waiting. But I want you to see what happens while they're waiting. God is also baked into the timeline. They didn't see it, but now they do. Because now they're going to have a Passover meal. This generation hasn't had the Passover meal. The first generation did, the ones in Egypt. They had the original Passover meal. They had lamb while the angel of death passed over them. That was the original Passover. This is the first commemorative session of a Passover. We do Passover still this day, but this is their first. It is their first in the promised land. This is what the Passover is for, right? The Passover is so God could deliver them from Egypt and bring them to the promised land. They're in the promised land. What do? The very first thing is they remember the Passover. That's kind of cool, don't you think? But look at this little detail that gets added here. They had unleavened bread and parched grain on the very same day, and they ate the produce of the land on the day after Passover. And then the manna ceased on the day after they ate the produce of the land. For 40 years, every day they woke up and looked out, and there's God has provided manna for them. He does that to make them trust him. Because every day, what are we going to eat? I don't know. Go out. Oh, God's provided. Okay, pick up the manna. Let's eat. He didn't have to do it that way. He could have done it in a lot of different ways. But he chose every day to have them go out, and each individual family went out and gathered up enough for their family. So they knew, it was drilled into them every day for 40 years, God is providing for you, Jehovah Jireh. But now they're in the promised land. Now they don't need the manna. Now they're supposed to trust him. And by the way, they do a much better job trusting than the last one did, the last generation. Now that God has built that trust in them, it's time for them to grow in their relationship with him. And you need to understand that's how it works with yours too. There are things that God will do for you in the early days of your Christian walk that he won't do for you when you get older. Because by now you should have learned how to trust him. Parents, we do that with kids, right? When a kid's first born, they have a dirty diaper, you clean it, you wipe their butt. We hope we're not wiping the butts of teenagers. We expect them to grow. We expect them to get better at that. We expect them to eventually brush their own teeth without me making them. We expect certain things out of kids who have grown up. So does God. God expects you to grow up. And as you grow up, he expects you to do more. And part of what's happening is we're trying to develop trust, which was what manna was for, but it's not necessary anymore because now they've actually hit the promised land. But this is the first Passover in the promised land. There's a pattern here. It's kind of hard to see at first, but first comes circumcision. Now, in Egypt, they were circumcised, but that was because they did it right. Because they were circumcised, they had a Passover celebration. Now, if you go back to Exodus and you read the entire passage, which I'm not putting up here right now, but if you do that, you'll see at the very end of the passage, it says, anyone who's not circumcised may not take part in the dinner. So they're all circumcised. And because they're circumcised, they get a Passover celebration. What's the Passover? God is delivering them out of Egypt. That's what Passover is. It's the final plague that makes the Pharaoh say, go. And then they get their deliverance. Well, what's happening here? Well, first they have to start with circumcision because they haven't done it yet. And then they do a Passover celebration. And then God is going to provide their deliverance. It's the same pattern that's going on again, right? So that's what happened. All right. Now, the purpose of manna was to teach them to trust the Lord in the wilderness so they could get to the promised land. We got that. We were already through all this. And now we're moving on. Okay. Jesus picks up on this. Jesus picks up on this very same idea of the manna. And he does a callback, but he's saying this should be part of your life. See, this idea of trusting God daily should be part of your life. That has been taught to the Israelites by the manna every 40 days. They've learned to trust. It's now baked into them. It's their DNA. We trust God to provide every day because he has for 40 years. After 40 years, it's a pattern. You can see that. And it's supposed to be baked into us. And when Jesus is teaching his disciples to pray, he says, this is still supposed to be baked into you. We shouldn't have to start over again. This should be part of you, which is why he says in the middle of this prayer, give us this day our daily bread. He's making a call back to the manna, but he's saying this should be baked into you, that you understand your daily bread comes from God. Now, this morning I woke up and I went downstairs. I got 2 slices of my daily bread and I put it into the toaster. And those of you who want to know what my daily bread is, I'll tell you, but I almost don't want to because it sells out all the time. There's that really good artisan bread that's made by Sarah Lee, I think it is, and it's the golden wheat. It is the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich ever. But every time I go to Giant Eagle, they're out. So I hate to tell you that. Please don't let that broadcast. We'll block that out when we put it on broadcast. I'm tired of people getting my bread. I'm going to get those 2 slices of bread. I'm going to put it in my toaster. I'm going to get out my peanut butter. I'm going to get this really great strawberry preserves I get at Costco because everything great is at Costco. And I'm going to make myself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that's the daily ritual for me. I bought that bread and froze it to keep it from other people. I bought that peanut butter. I bought that strawberry jelly with money that I made when I worked. And it was all provided by God. See, this is supposed to be baked into us. That's what he's saying. Everything you have, I provided for you. Because he has given me everything I need to make the money that I make in order to buy the food. So it's still coming from God. The manna was easy stuff. That's kindergarten stuff. I can see the manna is God. Okay, but we forget that. But as we grow up, we're supposed to realize everything comes from God. It's not an accident I have that food in there. God has provided everything for me, and that's what he's trying to teach us, and that's what he's trying to teach them. Okay, Jehovah Jireh provides according to where you are. If you're in the early days of Christianity, you're in the wilderness season, okay, he's going to do supernatural things all the time. But as you grow up, you shouldn't need them. That's why Jesus gets so frustrated when he's there and they keep asking him for miracles. He says, oh, all you want are signs. You're supposed to be past that by now. God doesn't want to have us living a day by day, miracle by miracle, and that's why I believe in God. Because you're alive every day, that's the miracle. You got a sunrise today, that's the miracle. Understand everything came from God. We're supposed to develop a relationship here, not see how many magic tricks I can do for you. Okay, now from there we shift into the final section of Joshua chapter 5. And what I love about this is it kind of shows you what the whole thing's been about. It really fits nicely in the theme. Because now Joshua is going to go, when he's all done doing this, they've had Passover and all that, now he's going to walk up to the walls of Jericho. Who knows why? We don't know why. Joshua doesn't tell us. I don't know what's in his heart. I can only imagine. It came to pass when Joshua was by Jericho. So he's walked down there. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a fort, but the ground in front of the fort is cleared out. Like, even if you go to like Fort Necessity up in Jamonville, which is this quick fort that Washington threw up in the French and Indian War. I don't think we call it Indian War anymore. I don't know. The French and whoever war that they fought. But in front of it, they cleared out the grounds in front of it. You guys are looking at me. Have you never been to Fort Necessity? Really? You need to go. It's amazing. Anyway, they cleared out all the ground in front of it. So you can see when the enemy approaches, right? Makes sense. You don't want them to have things to hide behind right in front of where they're attacking you. So you clear the grounds. So you know Jericho, when he walked to the gates, it's empty. In front of that, they have a mile of just empty grounds. They can see people coming from a mile away. So everybody's watching this guy, Jericho, walk up to the wall. And Jericho's walking. I don't know what he's doing. Is he praying? I don't know. Is he scared? Is he looking at those walls saying, God, I don't know how you're going to do this. Whew. He doesn't tell us what he's doing. But we know he's walking, and all of a sudden he looks up, and there's a man standing there. Where did he come from? He couldn't have hidden by anything. You can't suddenly have a man appear if you have miles of empty space. All of a sudden, the guy's there. It's supernatural. Joshua knows that. Joshua sees this guy, and not only that, he's in armor. Not only that, he has a big sword drawn. And this guy must have looked really imposing, because Joshua doesn't attack him, but he knows that his appearance is supernatural. So he goes up to him and he says, are you on our side, or are you on their side? Okay, that's a fair question, right? Isn't that a natural question to ask? Because he has this suspicion that that's an angel. He has a suspicion that that's a messenger from God himself, because he just appeared. And so he's trying to find out, are you here to fight for us? Or are you here to oppose us? Are you for us, or are you for them? And I love the response. No. I love that response. It's one of my favorite parts of the Bible. Are you on our side or theirs? No. No, I'm not. I'm not on your side. I'm not on their side. And he goes on. He says, I'm the commander of the army of the Lord, and now I have come. Why now? Because now they're obedient. And the commander of the army of the Lord has just appeared before Joshua. But he didn't say he was on Joshua's side. I want you to catch that. This is where that song gets it wrong. The God of Angel Armies is not on our side, any more than he was on Joshua's side. The Lord does not come to take sides. He comes to take over. The question is not, or should not be, are you on our side? The question is, am I on your side? Right? Because Joshua and all of his men, even after they recover from the circumcision, are not taking those walls of Jericho. There's no way. Any more than they could have crossed the Jordan. There's no way. I'm not on your side, Jericho. Your side would lose. However, as the commander of the Lord of the living God's armies, my side has never lost and will never lose. So how about this? How about you get on my side and watch while I take the walls of Jericho, right? Joshua gets it. Give Joshua credit. He falls on his face and worships and says, what does my Lord say to his servant? Oh yeah, I'm on your side. What do you want me to do? You say it and I'll do it. I'll circumcise him again if you want. I'll do whatever you say. Whatever you say. Now, the question is, who is this person in armor? Some people think it's an angel, but it cannot be an angel, because angels will not accept worship. They refuse it. I'm going to show you some scriptures on that. This commander accepts it. There's only one being in heaven that will accept worship, because there's only one who deserves it, and that's God himself. This is Jesus standing there. Jesus standing there in full armor, because Jesus, by the way, the Bible tells us, is the commander of the Lord's army. Not Michael. Michael's subservient to Jesus. Jesus commands the angels in heaven. Now, let me show you some scriptures. This is Revelation 19 and also 22. I fell at his feet to worship him because the angel's talking. And he said to me, don't do that. I'm a fellow servant with you and your brothers and sisters who are holding to the testimony of Jesus. Worship God, for it is the spirit of prophecy who bears his testimony to Jesus. And later in verse 22, he sees another one. He says, when I saw them, I fell down to worship at their feet. And the angel had been showing them to me. And he says, no, don't do that. I'm a fellow servant with you and your fellow prophets, with all who keep the words of the scroll. We worship God. An angel will not accept worship. I know there are a bunch of idiots out there trying to preach that we should, but angels do not accept our worship. They point us to God. In the same way that Peter and John, when they healed that person, said, don't. It's God. God did this. When Paul does this great miracle, he says, no, God. You always point to God. We don't take any credit for it. It's all God. So the commander of the Lord then says this, take off your sandals. You want to know what to do? Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy. Wait a minute. They're standing on the sands of Jericho, a pagan city. They worship Baal in there. What do you mean this ground is holy? There's no shrine here. There's no temple. There's no altar to Jehovah. They're standing on the sands of Jericho. What do you mean that you're standing on holy ground? Well, wherever the Lord stands becomes holy ground. He's standing in the presence of God. This land is holy now. It wasn't before I stepped on it, but it is now. And Joshua does. Because when he said, you tell me and I'll do it, he meant it. Because he knows that this battle has to belong to the Lord. Because he's probably walked all around Jericho and said, there's no way I can get in there. And there's no way he can get in there. He can only get in there if he lets God take over. How do we let God take over? Well, this is a progression of faith we've just seen here. The first part's consecration. It's called consecration. Sometimes it's called sanctification. Big, heavy theology words. What it means is set apart. I take this and I set it apart. Do you know you can sanctify anything? You can. All you have to do is say, this is now set apart for God's use. And mean it and keep it. It could be a place in your house. Clear out a closet and say, this is now my prayer closet. It won't be used to store any junk anymore. It is my prayer closet. I set this place aside for for God's use, and I'm going to go meet the Lord there when I go to pray. Do you know God honors that? I set that aside. This is what I'm going to use this for. You can do it with anything. And God tells us to set ourselves apart for his use. Come out of the world. He says it all the way through the Bible. Get near to me and I'll get near to you. You want God to fight your battles? This is the first step. You set aside. He's not going to fight the world's battles, so you got to get out of the world. The second step is, we see through Passover. What is Passover? Passover is remembering what God has already done for us. That's what Passover is for. It's to remind us what God has already done in delivering us out of our bondage. And what happens next in this whole thing? Provision. God says, okay, man is done. Now I'm going to give you the fruit of the land. Provision. This is yours now. I always wanted to give this to you. And then what happens? The commander of the Lord now has come, right? Now I came, he says. In other words, God's presence. You want God's power? It comes through his presence. You don't get his power without his presence. A lot of people want that. They want God's miracle power, but I don't want to be in his presence. I don't want to be close to him. I want to kind of stay over here, but I want you to do things for me. I want your power without your presence, not the way it works. You get God's presence and his power because you've set yourself apart. You remember what he's done for you. You've accepted his provisions and understand it's his, and you thank him for it. And now God's presence is there. And with his presence comes his power. It's an amazing thing when God brings his power with his presence. When Paul and Silas were in the jail in Philippi, and they've been beaten to within an inch of their lives, and it's midnight, and they have to go to trial tomorrow, they start singing hymns to the Lord. That must have sounded awful, by the way. I don't expect you to sound really good through a broken nose. They start praising the Lord. And the Lord came with all of his presence. And his power is so great, it blew the doors off the prison. It's an amazing thing when God's presence enters our problems because he brings his power with it. The question is, do we want it? Because there's a process here. Are you willing to consecrate even if it costs you something? Now we see that in this, it cost them some pain. But consecration always costs you something. Because there's things in this world we like. There's things we're holding on to. There are things we don't want to let go of. Are we willing to do that, to consecrate ourselves for the Lord? Can we trust God and his timing even when it seems foolish? I don't know, God. I don't think this is going to work. But I'm going to do it anyway. That's what Abraham does, by the way. You see that when God comes to him and he's 100 years old and he has Ishmael that he wants God to bless. God says, I'm not blessing Ishmael. You and Sarah are going to yet have a child. And he laughs. That's not going to happen. I'm as good as dead. My wife's been through menopause. She's 90, Lord. We're not having a child. God says, yes, you are. Kings are going to come from her. He says, no, they're not. And God says, you'll see. And he leaves. It never says that Abraham changes his mind. But you know what he does? He goes out and circumcises everybody in his household. Even though he says, this isn't going to happen, he's still obedient to what God told him to do. And then God does his part. That's the way it works. God gives you something to do. It's usually easy to do. And you have to be obedient to that. And then God will do his part. But he's waiting for you to be obedient. Will you let him transition you from dependence to stewardship? Will you stop asking for miracles and just accept what he's already done? Or do we keep wanting to see the miracles? Okay, God, I almost believe you now. You jump through that hoop. Can you jump through this hoop? So many Christians do that. If you do this, I swear, God, I'll believe you. Oh, next week I got a new one. And finally, are we willing to say, I don't want you to join my side. I want to know, how can I join your side? Because that's the secret of it all. God fights the battles for you because they're his battles, not yours. He'll take them on as his, but he'll fight them. And then you just join his side. The promise for Joshua, if you do all that, is this. When we obey his word, God prepares the way. He had already prepared. He was already making the hearts melt of the enemies. He was already preparing the way. When we set ourselves apart, God enters. Now the commander of the Lord's army is here. And finally, when we submit to his command, he fights the battles, which I promise you is coming up, I think next week. Pretty sure next week. He'll fight the battle of Jericho. Yeah, I know, you've heard it before. But that's what we want, right? We want God fighting the battles. So we need to let him do it. The God of angel armies is waiting for us to join his side.